Welcome back to another episode of Freedom from Fire. During these very difficult times, managing social distancing and making sure that we are following appropriate safety guidelines, Freedom from Fire has embraced a new style via Zoom. We will strive consistently to bring our valuable content and information to our viewers, as well as providing our amazing interviews. Coming up on this episode, I'll introduce a person from a unit that provides a very invaluable service to many folks battling addiction here in Philly. So please stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to Freedom from Fire. I will be your host, Lieutenant Lisa Desamour. I'm currently stationed in our department's Fire Prevention Division, where community risk reduction efforts are a primary goal. Here at Freedom from Fire, we aim to improve your quality of living by giving you fire and life safety information. We also introduce you to our local safety partners. The nation is in the midst of an unprecedented opioid epidemic. Statistics show that 130 people a day die from opioid drug related overdose. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that the total economic burden of prescription opioid misuse alone in the United States is 78.5 billion a year, including those costs of healthcare, lost productivity, addiction treatment, and criminal justice involvement. Some stats that we know about this crisis: roughly 21 to 29% of patients prescribed opioids for chronic pain misuse them. Between 8 and 12% develop an opioid use disorder. And an estimated 4 to 6% who misuse prescription opioids transition to heroin. About 80% of people who use heroin first misuse prescription opioids. Prevention and access to treatment for opioid addiction and overdose reversal drugs are critical to fighting this epidemic. To help combat this devastating crisis, the Philadelphia Fire Department operates a unit called AR-2. Here with us today to talk about opioid addiction and AR-2 is paramedic Tiesha Thomas. Taisha,
Hi, everybody.
I said your name all wrong. Taisha Thomas. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Taisha, for agreeing to do this with us. I really appreciate this, and this is something that's so pressing and important for our viewers. First, and I do this, this is tradition, this is customary, call it all that good stuff. I always open up interviews with first asking my person that I'm interviewing to tell me a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, so my name is Tiesha Thomas. I'm a paramedic for the Philadelphia Fire Department. I've been on for about maybe 15 years. Right now, I'm currently pursuing a career in nursing as well. I do operate the AR-2 unit within the other members, and I am definitely thrilled to be on the show today.
Thank you, thank you. How much time do you have with the department now, Taisha?
15 years.
10 years. Okay,
hmm
so kind of sisterhood in time wise, I guess, with the department. And the reason why I want to make sure that folks are aware of that, so they know that the information that you bring to us today is you're informed. Pretty much is the bottom line, and you know what you're talking about. Um, so I guess to start off the actual interview portion itself, what exactly are opioids?
So opioids pretty much are suppressants, drugs that suppress a certain nervous condition in the brain, which sometimes causes respiratory compromise. It is very addictive. Um, a lot of people generally start on opiates from pain medication.
Okay.
Um, in a nutshell, it's a drug of choice, usually. Um, they usually start off with like oxycontins, morphine, Then it usually, as you said with your statistics, it ends up with use of heroin. A lot of times now, heroin is cut with fentanyl, which is still considered an opioid. Um, but all ages, all races, it's pretty bad right now.
Okay. And we're definitely going to get to that because that's definitely something that I want to touch on as well. Based from your experience, how has this epidemic, which is perfect leading into this question, how has this epidemic affected Philadelphia? From your experience, how do you see it affecting those locally?
We have a specific area in Philadelphia, which we call the Kensington area. That's more of the area that we get a high volume of overdose calls. Um, it has the Philadelphia Fire Department running a lot. We take a lot of people to the hospital down there for overdoses. I would say our status now is probably just in that area alone, probably like maybe over 1,000 calls,
Wow.
just for opioid overdoses and heroin use. Um, I don't want people to always think that when you say opioid that it's considered heroin because a lot of people think that no heroin. I mean opioids come in different types of forms, different shapes, different chemicals. I mean all kinds of stuff. But opioids can be different. Oxycontin, morphine, like I said before, heroin, fentanyl. Um, it's all different kinds. But the most lethal one, the most addictive one right now is heroin.
Okay.
It's definitely.
Um, do you believe, or should I say, does education have basically what I want to say is, do you feel like when those people who are may not be informed or maybe perhaps misinformed, does education play a role in assisting the epidemic for making better public health surveillance issues?
It really does because a lot of people do not know the significance of pain medicine and how it can really affect a person, how it can become addictive. Education is definitely needed down in the community of the side effects of it, long term side effects, the medical problems. And we go back to the question that you asked before, and like how it's affecting the community and Philadelphia alone, the amount of call volumes, then that usually translates to other communicable diseases, which puts our medical insurance and the hospitals and the rehab centers, everybody's at risk, and that puts it up higher because a lot of times you have the community, the city, the state that's paying for these programs,
Mhm.
and a lot of times, it's just on the rise. It's a lot of money being wasted because people are not being educated on the use.
And one thing I want to definitely put out there too that I forgot to mention a little earlier is that um, opioid addiction has no bias. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter, what your educational background is, your economic status. This can affect anyone. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. The youngest I've seen my time of working, especially now that I'm down in the Kansas area all the time, 16,
Wow.
16 years old.
And
16 years
that's
old.
devastating because I mean that addiction alone, any kind of addiction, it gets to a certain point where it tears families apart.
Yeah, it does. It really does. It really, really does.
Um, so you mentioned and you brought up a really good point when you talk about pain and pain, I want to go a little bit further with pain management. Do you think better pain management then can contribute to the success of lowering addiction statistics?
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, me being down in the Kensington area, and we're talking to a lot of people who are in addiction down there. I will say at least 75% of them will tell you that their addiction started off with some type of pain medicine. They had like a sports injury. They had an accident and they needed surgery. A lot of them will tell you it started off with just plain old pain medicine like Percocets and Oxycontin. I really think if they start at a lower level, like with extra strength Tylenol or a high dose of Motrin or what they call like another substitute Toradol, something that's not as addictive as just going straight to giving somebody Oxycontin and Percocet for pain.
Right.
Some people can tolerate pain. Some people don't even really need medicine after certain surgeries. And, um, whether they have sprains or strains, they don't really need an opioid. Motrin or Tylenol would just be fine, but a lot of the doctors and a lot of places will give them right from surgery the Percocets or morphine or whatever opiate that they so chose to write prescriptions for. But I honestly think that um, when you talk about pain management, it should be managed correctly, and I think it should go in stages. And from vital signs and from different things, you can tell when a person is really, really in a lot of
You
pain.
absolutely can. Yep.
So I think it should start at a lower level, and not the basic stuff that we can buy over the counter should be the first things that we start with.
Right. And when you think about, targeting, or rather, a better word, with combating, you know, an epidemic of this proportion, the first thing that comes to mind is just obviously getting to the root of it, getting to, get to the beginning. I mean, for lack of a better word, for plain conversation that everyone can understand, get to the beginning. And where does the beginning start? Like you said, pain management. Typically, that's where people are first introduced to these strong medications. And then we touched on rather education, educating people, because a lot of times folks just they don't know, and that does a lot of people a disservice when you're not educated. And I think that's on both sides. I mean, from everyone from the healthcare standpoint to to people that we are treating. What are your thoughts on that?
Education is everything, and that starts from these doctors that's writing these prescriptions for these
Right.
pain medicines, and constantly writing them as opposed to saying, okay, well, you've been on this for 7 days. How about we, decrease it to this or increase it to this if it's not working?
And you know what's so interesting too? I mean, just from hearing the number that you mentioned earlier about the call volume, I can only imagine, when when folks share their story with you. I mean, I'm sure you've heard
Yes,
all
yes.
kinds of stories as to, how people got into, the situations that they're in.
Addiction, yeah. There are some really, 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 really intelligent people down in that area.
Wow.
And I've had numerous conversations with a whole lot of them. And some of them come from really good backgrounds and well to do families and good homes. And, they've been in addiction for a long time. And um, they get to a point where family has exhausted all their measures with getting help. So they pretty much burn their bridges with their family. And the only family that they have is considered the area that they're in.
Right.
But a lot of times, like I said, 75% started with like pain medicine. Then then it boils down to like post traumatic stress syndrome, and then you got the mental health issues, um, domestic. If your boyfriend doing it, she's doing it. So it's a lot that contributes to a lot of people
This
from
is
treatment.
this is something that I definitely I have a couple more questions that I definitely want to get to with you. But we're going to take a short break, and when we return, we'll definitely keep this conversation going. So please stay tuned.
As birthplace to the first volunteer fire companies, Philadelphia is home to one of the nation's premier fire museums. Fireman's Hall Museum displays the city's fire history in addition to promoting fire safety. You can visit Fireman's Hall Museum in Old City at 147 North 2nd Street. Visit firemanshallmuseum.org to learn more, or watch the museum's show, Curator's Corner, on LaSalle TV.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Freedom from Fire. I'm your host, Lieutenant Lisa Desamour. We've been discussing the nation's opioid addiction crisis and what we're doing locally to help those that are affected. So, we're going to continue on with the second portion of our interview because this is a topic that we can talk about, I'm sure, all day and so on and so forth. But for the small portion of time that we're allotted, we're going to try to hit some really good points. So my next question, Taisha, is can you tell us how is the Philadelphia Fire Department addressing the crisis specifically?
City of Philadelphia and the health department and the fire department launched a program which is called the Leave Behind Narcan. This is Narcan that's given to the public. It's free. Anybody can get it, meaning people in addiction, people that's not in addiction. And it really has been successful down in the Kensington area. We give it out to a lot of the businesses down there. 'Cause a lot of people overdose sometimes right out front. They'll come out and they administer it. I think that was the best program that the city has really offered to the community to help the involvement of trying to keep the death and overdose rate down. So lately though it's been real low in numbers, and that's a good thing. They also launched a unit called the Alternative Response Unit down in the Kensington area.
Oh, thank you for that too, because I was going to lead up to that. We've been discussing everything, epidemic related as far as the addictions rather, for opioid use, and I completely didn't even think. I'm sure a lot of folks were like, "Well, what's AR stand for?" So for that, I definitely thank you. So tell us specifically, or rather exactly, what AR-2 does.
So AR-2 again, which is the Alternative Response Unit, it's a unit that's housed with a paramedic or a paramedic lieutenant and a social worker. And our goal is to get individuals right into treatment from the street. A lot of times, if the individual wants to get treatment, they have to go through the ER, they have to go through the CRC, which is longer wait times, which puts them in a withdrawal state. It can be painful and very uncomfortable, and a lot of them don't want to do that. So what we try to do is, what we usually do is we respond on a 911 call to just overdose. So I'm pretty much dispatching myself out on runs. When I get to these calls, sometimes the individual has already received Narcan. If not, we administer it, or the medic unit will administer it. We are not actually dispatched out as a unit. I have to actually put my own self on a call with the medic unit.
Okay.
So, if anything goes wrong, at least I have the medic unit there to help out. We always ask the individual, do they want to get some type of treatment? Do they want to get help for their addiction? We have some that say yes, we have some that say no. They say no, a lot of times they'll walk away. They don't want to be bothered with us at all. I usually try to give them some literature or a number or a flyer to let them know, if there's a time that you or anybody want treatment, you can always give us a call. So if they do say yes, I, as a paramedic, we usually get like a complete set of vital signs and make sure that they're physically and their vital signs are good and they're physically fit and their vital signs are good in order for them to get into a rehab or detox center. Once we establish that, then the social worker that I work with, which her name is Donna Echoes, and she's fantastic, by the way, she's a very good social worker. She will then start calling around looking for a bed, which sometimes can be a little time consuming, depending on the patient's medical history, if they're taking certain medications, what type of treatment they want, whether it's detox, rehab, whether they want Suboxone or methadone treatment. So different facilities does two different things. So one place might not have a bed for that person, so it could be time consuming. We have another unit which is called the AR-2A unit. So while we're waiting to place the patient, we get them out of that area and we take them to where our RD is located, which is located on Aramingo Avenue for the time being. So we get them out of what we call the catchment area, and that's the area with the high volume of calls, and that is from Tioga down to Lehigh, and then 4th Street all the way over to Richmond. That's what we call our catchment area. That's the only area that AR2 works in. Okay, so once we establish that the patient is healthy enough and we're getting them a bed and they're waiting, we take them to the RV on Aramingo Avenue where they can watch TV, they can get something to drink. The social worker can also start calling around different other facilities to see what beds are available. And then once we find them a bed, then the AR2 unit will take them straight into detox and rehab. So our mission is to bypass the hospital, bypass the CRC, and take them right to treatment. Because when a person is in addiction, they don't want to sit around and wait, 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 wait. And sometimes they can be stuck in place for 24 hours waiting for a bed with no type of comfort mat and they're going through withdrawal. Um, so for the most part, it's been very, very successful. COVID really set us back because we were on the road. We've gotten a lot of people into treatment. We do have a lot of success stories. Due to hip hop, can't really talk about it, but we've gotten a lot of people out, and it is working. It is definitely working.
That is amazing. So is AR-2 dispatched like a regular medic unit? So if they call, I would assume, or someone calls.
See the medics in the catchment area, which is a couple of medics, medic two, medic three. Those ones that runs in that area a lot, they will sometimes request us help. If they get an overdose and we're on another call,
Hmm.
they'll ask for us to be available to come on treatment. We will come out to the call and get the patient as well.
Okay.
That's been outside of the catchment area as well, and they'll call really, really want to go to treatment, we'll come get them. We'll get them to where they need to go. One of the hardest things I think about with the program is when people are not medically able to go into treatment. So a lot of times we have different cases where it's medically cleared, and then we'll come get them and take them to treatment. A lot of times we lose people in that little loop because they don't want to sit at the ER and they don't want to, go to the hospital.
So one thing that I definitely can say that I learned is the social worker aspect. So has the social worker always been a part of the AR-2 team? They have. And so what is their primary goal or their primary responsibilities?
There are a lot of resources to get people the help that they need. No one has to be, no one has to be out in addiction. Um, there's a lot of different programs that they have and resources they can get people into different places, come off the street and get the help that they need.
Okay. So that having the social worker there with you guys, you definitely see that as a positive.
Oh, it's definitely it's one of the key points of having that unit.
That's a beautiful thing. Like I said, that was definitely something I learned, and I'm sure a lot of folks weren't aware of that as well. Um, so how many guys are staffing the unit? How many? So it's two paramedics
So it's
and
one paramedic, and one social worker.
oh, okay. So that's yeah, I was not aware of that either.
A lot of work because now I have to dispatch, I have to dock, and I have to
Okay.
drive.
Wow. So do you guys actually transport to a drug treatment facility as well?
Oh yeah. We go to Parson County, Cedarville. We take them out to Keystone out in Chester County. We take them very far out that will come down to get patients, which that's one of the things I like to do, get people in the car or people in Washington.
How would you describe how you guys are received in your catchment area in that portion of the city?
Well, I'm very sociable, so a lot of them, a lot of people down in the Chesapeake area. So they call me the druggy buggy or the druggy buggy lady. That's our name down in the Chesapeake area. But for the most part, they know what we are. They know what we do. They know if they need help, they know to come. And also, there's a ministry called the Rock Ministry down in the Kensington area. If they want help, they go to the facility down there, and most of the time they will call us, and we'll meet them at that facility to get the patient.
Um, so does AR2 provide any follow-up care actions such as resources for aftercare?
So the social workers have access to follow up with the patient. However, once they're discharged or they complete the program, they're not able to get any more information.
Up very, very important and valid points when we talk about the discharge aspect. I mean, in the beginning, which is where we're going to always start, is in the beginning. And in reference to battling addiction, we talk about, making sure that there's access to treatment and making sure we have access to, certain preventative measures such as education. Then, okay, we got all of that. Now in the end, towards discharge, how do we address that? Because, like you just said, a lot of these folks are homeless or they have nothing to return to. And unfortunately, because of that, they go right back into that vicious cycle. And it's amazing because when folks decide to say think of Philadelphia, they think of your catchment area, they think of Kensington and K&A, and this segment is local, but nationally, you have folks in California who've heard of it. You have folks, I'm sure, in your catchment area who probably traveled from distant states.
I'm going to say 50% of people down there are not in Philadelphia. They are not in the Philadelphia area.
It's a sad thing. And as I mentioned moments earlier, this is something we can talk about forever. Unfortunately, we are in a seriously, constrained, a condensed time frame, I should say. I want to thank you so, so, so very much for joining us today. Remember, if you would like to find out more about us on LaSalle TV, you can check out our social media sites. And if you're interested in learning about the Philadelphia Fire Department, visit our Facebook, Twitter, and web pages. Also, check out Fireman's Hall Museum located at 147 North 2nd Street in the old section portion of our wonderful city. I would like to once again thank Tiesha so much for joining us today. We had so much information. I had to cut her off for that. I do apologize. And I'd like to thank you for tuning in and watching. So until next time, remember, fire is everyone's fight. Stay safe and remain free from fire.